Relax. You will get everything soon, but not in the way your anxious mind imagines it. Grasping, chasing, controlling every detail. No, that is precisely the tension that keeps you from it. You see, the more you strain, the more you reinforce the sense of lack. And lack is not a condition of the universe. It is a condition of thought. Life is not in a hurry. It dances. It flows. It does not rush toward a destination. It explores. It expands. It expresses. But never forces. Everything in nature has its season, its rhythm, its timing. The tree does not try to bear fruit in winter. It simply knows. So why do you think you must panic your way into becoming? The truth is, you are not a separate observer trying to manipulate a world outside of you. You are not a stranger in this universe. You are it. You are the ripple on the ocean, and the ocean is rippling you. Everything you seek is already in motion, not because you demanded it, but because it is the very nature of being itself to unfold, to reveal, to give. The tension arises because you have confused yourself with the image in your head. That image is always insecure, always striving, always waiting. But the real you, the living, breathing awareness, is timeless, calm, patient. The moment you stop trying to force the current, you float. And in floating, you find that life begins to bring you exactly what you need at the exact moment you are ready to receive it. So relax, not because someone told you it will be okay, but because in this moment, this breath, this stillness, that there should be more between that and there. No efficacy necessary. Relax. Relax. The more you chase something, the more you affirm its absence. And so, the harder you try, the further away it seems to move. It's a paradox we rarely see because we're so caught up in the habit of effort, in the illusion that if we just push harder, try more, think more, then we will finally arrive. But the very act of striving implies a discontent, a sense that something vital is missing. And when you live from that space, you are continuously broadcasting lack, not just outward, but inward too. You become the echo chamber of your own dissatisfaction. This is not how life was meant to be experienced. Desire in itself is not the problem. It's natural, even beautiful, to want and to envision. The problem arises when desire hardens into craving, when it grips your mind and convinces you that this moment is not enough, that you are not enough, that reality as it is now is incomplete, imperfect, and insufficient. From that posture, the world becomes a problem to solve, a battle to win, a goal to conquer, and in that framework, you are always behind, always lacking, always reaching and never arriving. We've been conditioned to measure life in outcomes, to tie our worth to results, to evaluate our happiness based on whether or not the external matches the mental picture we've created. And in that constant measurement, we lose something sacred. We lose presence. We miss the breeze on our face, the way light dances on a wall, the subtle rhythm of breath, the quiet miracle of simply being alive. We trade all of that for a fantasy that forever stays one step ahead, always promising peace, but never delivering it. We have to turn the tide and make it difficult for individuals elsewhere. Imagine a man running after his own shadow. The faster he runs, the faster the shadow moves. He believes he must catch it, so he runs harder, sweats more, stresses more, never realizing that he is the one projecting it in the first place. That's what chasing your imagined fulfillment looks like. It's chasing your own mind, trying to solve a problem that never existed outside of thought. When you are constantly striving, what you are actually doing is resisting what is. There's an internal message being sent. This moment is not enough. I must get somewhere else. I must become someone else. But this resistance creates friction. It creates suffering. You may believe that stress and pressure will help you reach your goal faster, but in truth, they create the very fog that blocks the path. They keep you tangled in the mind, disconnected from the intelligence of life itself. There is a reason why the most meaningful insights, the most powerful moments of clarity often come, not when you are struggling to find them, but when you finally give up trying. In a walk, in a bath, in silence, in stillness, When the mind lets go and the heart returns to the present, something opens, not because you forced it open, but because you've stopped holding it shut. That's the secret most missing. It is not through effort that you align with life, but through surrender, through awareness, through remembering that you are not lacking, that nothing essential is absent. The irony of all this is that when you stop chasing, what you were chasing begins to come to you. Not because you gave up in defeat, but because you gave up the illusion that you were separate from what you sought. The love you wanted, the peace you longed for, the success you imagined. It all flows more freely when you're not blocking the channel with anxiety and control. The universe doesn't respond to desperation. It responds to alignment, to resonance. And resonance comes not from neediness, but from presence, from being tuned into the natural rhythm of things. We often talk about manifestation as though it's a process of commanding reality to give us what we want. But manifestation is not about commanding, it's about allowing. It's not about programming the world to your demands. It's about aligning with the truth that all things are already in motion, that the pattern of your life is already unfolding, and your task is not to force it, but to participate in it fully, consciously, without resistance. You see, lack is not an objective condition. It is not something outside of you. It is a lens, a perspective, a belief structure. It's the story you tell yourself when you forget who you are, and the world reflects that story back to you over and over, not as a punishment, but as a reminder. This is what you're vibrating. This is what you're thinking. This is what you're assuming about life. But the moment you shift that story, the moment you stop speaking from emptiness and begin to live from fullness, life responds differently. The outer world bends to the tone of your inner one. So then, striving becomes obsolete, not because ambition is wrong, but because in your stillness, you begin to act from inspiration, not desperation. You begin to move from joy, not fear. You create not to fill a hole, but to express the fullness that is already there. And from that space, everything that once seemed distant begins to move toward you. Not out of pity, not out of coincidence, but because you are now in harmony with the flow. The more you chase, the more you affirm that you don't have. But when you let go, you begin to see that you always did, that everything you've ever looked for was never lost. It was just hidden beneath the noise of striving. When that noise quiets, clarity emerges. And in that clarity, you don't just get what you want, you realize you were never without it. Life has its own rhythm, its own unfolding, its own timing, that does not respond to pressure, force, or panic. There is a current in everything that moves, a quiet pulse behind every moment. But we so often miss it because we are busy racing ahead, insisting that now is not enough, that something must happen sooner, that we must control the pace of what is already perfectly timed. And in doing so, we fall out of sync with life, forgetting that we are not the conductor of this orchestra. We are the instrument being played by something far deeper, far older, and far wiser than thought. Look at nature. The tree does not rush to grow its leaves. The moon does not speed up its cycle just because someone wants more light at night. The tides rise and fall with no urgency, no hesitation. They simply move according to a harmony that has existed long before any human decision. Everything in the natural world understands this principle, not intellectually, but in its being. The flower blooms when it's ready, not when someone shouts at it to open. And yet, here we are, constantly shouting at our lives, "Hurry up, where is it? Why hasn't it happened yet?" As if impatience was some kind of spiritual virtue. But timing is not something to be controlled, it is something to be trusted. Because when you look back on your life, the moments that shaped you the most often didn't arrive when you wanted them to. They arrived when you were ready, even if you didn't know you were. What looked like a delay was actually preparation. What felt like a detour was actually redirection. What seemed like a denial was often a deeper kind of mercy. Life knows what it's doing, even when you don't. This doesn't mean you sit back passively and wait for everything to fall into your lap. No, it means you stop trying to wrestle time into obedience. It means you act when moved, not when panicked. It means you listen for the right moment, the aligned moment, not the convenient one. There is a wisdom in patience, not as a form of waiting, but as a form of listening. When you stop pushing, you start hearing. When you stop hurrying, you start seeing. And in that stillness, you become sensitive to the rhythm of things. There's a kind of madness in modern life that says you must always be moving forward, always be achieving, always be building something bigger, faster, better. But this compulsion is rooted in fear, not in joy. Fear that if you're not doing enough, you won't be enough. Fear that if you're not progressing, you are failing. But life doesn't work in straight lines. It spirals, it circles, it pauses, it breathes, and so must you. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do is nothing, not in laziness, but in reverence, in surrender, in recognition that your inner seasons must be honored just as much as your outer goals. Winter is not less valuable than summer just because it looks quieter. It is the time of deep roots, of invisible growth, of rest that is necessary for the bloom to come. But if you judge the winter, if you resist the quiet times in your life, you miss their gift. You uproot the process before it completes itself. It's not. You uproot the process before it already unfolded beautifully in its own way. The anxiety to force timing is often born from comparison. You see others doing things, achieving things, becoming things, and you think, I must catch up. But there is no race. There is no finish line. There is only your path, which cannot be rushed or delayed, only walked with presence. The tree beside you may be taller, but it grew in different soil. It faced different storms. Its timing has nothing to do with yours. To compare your timing to another's is to ignore the specific design of your own becoming. There is also this idea that if it hasn't happened yet, it never will. But life does not operate on your deadlines. You may feel like you've waited too long, like the opportunity has passed, like you've missed your chance. But what if the delay was actually part of the design? What if the very waiting you're resisting is the womb where your next becoming is being nurtured? What if the pause is sacred? What if it's not absence, but incubation? When you surrender to the rhythm of life, you stop trying to bend it to your will. You begin to cooperate with it. You start to see the signs, the signals, the subtle nudges, and you realize you don't need to make things happen. You need to allow them. You don't need to pull the fruit from the branch before it's ripe. You need to water the roots, tend the soil, and trust that the sun will do its part. This kind of trust is not passive. It's deeply active. It requires inner strength to not act out of fear. It takes presence to hold space for something that hasn't arrived yet without collapsing into doubt. That's real power, not in controlling time, but in moving in harmony with it. The mind will always say it's not fast enough, but the soul whispers, it's right on time. And if you listen closely, beneath the noise of worry, beneath the rush of expectations, you can feel it. That deeper pulse, that quiet unfolding, that rhythm that has carried you through every single moment of your life, even the ones you didn't understand. And so life continues to move, not as a machine on a schedule, but as a living mystery, pulsing and unfolding at its own perfect pace. When you let go of the need to control, you begin to discover a strange, soft freedom, a kind of ease that comes not from having everything figured out, but from not needing to. There's an illusion that control gives you safety, that if you can just tighten your grip, plan every outcome, and anticipate every possibility, then you'll finally relax. But this is the trap. The very effort to control life often creates the stress we think it will prevent. The more we tighten our hold, the more tense we become. The more we try to force certainty, the more we distance ourselves from peace. This obsession with control is not natural. It is taught. It is conditioned. From an early age, we're taught to aim, strive, push, calculate. We are taught to make plans and live by them, to create identities and defend them, to manage outcomes and measure success by how closely the world bends to our expectations. But life is not a spreadsheet. It is not a project. It is not a formula to solve. It is a living, breathing mystery. And the harder you try to master it like a machine, the more it resists you. The more you try to control life, the more distant it becomes. Because control is built on fear, and fear always separates. Letting go does not mean giving up. It means loosening the grip of fear. It means releasing the illusion that your anxiety is holding the world together. It means recognizing that the more you try to clutch at things, the more they slip through your fingers. Not because life is cruel, but because that is the nature of flow. Water cannot be held in a tight fist, it slips through the crack. And so does peace. So does joy. So does the very thing you're trying so hard to achieve when you live in the shadow of control. When you stop trying to control everything, you begin to live in rhythm with life, not in resistance to it. You begin to trust that what needs to unfold will unfold, not because you engineered it perfectly, but because it is simply time. And when it's not time, no amount of force can make it happen. That kind of surrender, the kind that allows life to move through you without resistance, is the most courageous thing you can do. Because it means you are no longer operating from fear. You are no longer a servant to your need for certainty. You are no longer trying to build walls against the unknown. The unknown is not your enemy. It is the space in which life breathes. It is where creativity is born. It is the fertile ground of growth, of possibility, of transformation. But you cannot experience its gifts if you approach it like a threat. The unknown opens to you only when you approach it with presence, not panic. With openness, not control. Control is always about the future. It's about trying to manipulate what hasn't happened yet based on assumptions drawn from the past. But presence lives only here, only now. And when you are truly present, deeply here, there is no need to control. Because you are no longer living in a mental projection of what might happen. You are simply alive, awake to the moment, responsive rather than reactive. Responsive. This responsiveness is very different from control. Responsiveness flows from presence. It is the ability to move with life, not against it. To dance with what arises, not to dominate it. A tree does not control the wind, it bends with it. A river does not control the rocks, it flows around them. This is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is a knowing that the path forward is not always made by force, but by grace. By the ability to move with what is, rather than against what is not. So much of our suffering comes not from what is happening, but from our resistance to it. From the mental story that says, this should not be happening, or this must happen now. We build tight frameworks of expectation, and then suffer when life, being what it is, refuses to fit into them. But life has never signed a contract to meet your expectations, it simply is. It unfolds as it must, and when you stop trying to force it to look a certain way, you begin to see the beauty that was there all along. Letting go of control does not mean letting chaos take over. It means learning to trust in the intelligence of life itself. There is a deeper order, a harmony that exists, even in what appears random or difficult. You may not always understand it in the moment. In fact, you often won't. But hindsight reveals what control cannot. That there was something moving you, guiding you, shaping you, something that required your trust, not your interference. When you live in a state of control, you miss the subtle. You become so focused on what should be that you fail to see what is. You miss the signs. You miss the opportunities that don't fit your mental picture. You miss the invitations that come quietly, not loudly. Life does not always shout. It often whispers. But if your mind is too busy trying to orchestrate every outcome, you will not hear it. Letting go requires a different kind of attention. Not the attention of effort, but of awareness. Not the attention of management, but of presence. It is a soft gaze rather than a hard stare. A sense of being open to the moment rather than trying to dominate it. And from this space, life begins to reveal itself to you in ways you never expected. Often, what you are trying to control is not the situation itself, but your emotional reaction to it. You think, if I can control this outcome, I won't feel afraid. If I can control this person, I won't feel rejected. If I can control this environment, I won't feel vulnerable. But this is backwards. The only real freedom is inner. It is the ability to feel what you feel without being owned by it. To meet your fear without collapsing into it. To stand in uncertainty without trying to conquer it. That is the strength of surrender. It is not passive. It is fiercely alive. It does not collapse into helplessness, but rises in deep acceptance. It meets the unknown not with a plan, but with presence. It allows each moment to be what it is, without needing to be something else. And in that space, something magical happens. Life begins to carry you. Not because you are forcing it, but because you have finally become light enough to float. There is a kind of intelligence in life that moves far beyond logic. It speaks not in explanations, but in experience. It cannot be controlled, only witnessed. And when you give up the need to manage it all, you finally begin to hear it. You begin to move with it. You begin to trust that where you are is exactly where you need to be. We are always in such a rush to arrive somewhere, as if the moment we're in isn't enough, as if life is hiding just around the next corner, waiting to begin when the right job comes, the right relationship, the right recognition, the right moment. And in this constant leaning forward, we miss the subtle miracle of where we already are. We live as if life is a staircase, each step a mere passage to something higher, more important, more real. But what if every step is the arrival? What if there is no final summit, but rather a deepening into this present unfolding? You see, the idea that everything is somewhere out there in the future is a trick of the mind. It's a kind of psychological mirage, where fulfillment always appears just ahead of you, just beyond your grasp, and so you chase. You chase money, status, spiritual enlightenment, peace, love, all as destinations. But the very act of chasing places you in separation from them. You begin to live in a mental future rather than an embodied now. You are no longer here. And that is the only place anything ever truly happens. Presence is not a thing you achieve. It is what is left when you stop running. It is not something you must acquire through effort. It is what remains when you stop trying to become. Becoming is always about the next thing. But being is now. And being, ironically, is the very thing you are most seeking while constantly overlooking. You can't find now by trying to get to it. You are already it. The moment you remember this, you return to yourself, not as a future version, but as what you already are. But it's so easy to forget, so easy to get lost in the drama of your imagined life. The plans, the delays, the expectations, the disappointments. You think you're late. You think you're behind. You compare your pace to others, and in doing so, create the very suffering you're trying to escape. But who told you that you're supposed to be anywhere other than where you are? Who created this idea of a race, of milestones, of timelines? These are human inventions. The tree does not worry that it is growing too slowly. The clouds do not rush across the sky. The tide comes in and out with no concern for whether it is early or late. This deep need to get somewhere is often rooted in a fear that who we are right now isn't enough. That if we just accomplish more, become more, we'll finally be worthy of our own acceptance. But this very search for worthiness is the barrier to realizing it. You are already whole, but you can't see it while you're busy trying to complete yourself. You are not a project to be perfected. You are a presence to be inhabited. This moment, as it is, without your improvements, is already complete. And until you allow yourself to feel that, you'll keep searching for a doorway that's already open. Even your longing, even your desire to experience more of life is something to observe, not something to conquer. Upon you, as it has always centered, and the trust is in human act for you too. Unicit for us. And that's fully to think you'll be able to tell Yupin, the trigger that you story is something to absorb. Conditioned for peace. You trade the richness of now for the illusion of then. It's possible to long and still be grounded. To happiness, the dream is to hook one's mind to the sky. It's to read the limit in the sky. You are not missing your life. You are simply missing your attention to it. Every breath is a miracle, and yet we are so rarely amazed. The smallest gestures of being, sunlight through the curtains, the sound of rain, the quiet companionship of your own breath. These are the gateways to truth. But you won't see them if you're always chasing some larger moment. What if this is the larger moment? What if this gentle unfolding is the whole point? We think that certain external events will validate us, that reaching a particular level of success or love or enlightenment will grant us the right to finally feel alive. But life is not something you earn through achievements. It is something you awaken to by remembering. Remembering that you are already in the middle of it, that this is it. Not the idea of it, not the edited version, but this raw, unfiltered immediacy. This is where your power is, not in what might be, but in what is. The mind is always seeking, that's its nature. It wants to map things, to label, to interpret, to analyze. It wants to find patterns and predict outcomes. And there's nothing wrong with that until it becomes your master. The mind will always tell you that the next moment is better than this one, that peace will come when the conditions are right. But that's the great misunderstanding. Peace is not in the conditions, it's in your relationship to them. Peace is not in the world conforming to your preferences. It's in your ability to relax into the mystery, into the mess, into the mystery, into the mystery, into the mystery, into the mystery. And once you stop rushing towards something else, you begin to feel that fullness in ordinary things. In your morning coffee, in the laughter of a friend, in the silence between thoughts, in the way your chest rises and falls, without your effort again and again keeping you here. You begin to see that life is not something waiting for you after your next breakthrough. It is this, and has always been this, and it always will be. To arrive where you are requires no movement. It only requires remembrance. The remembrance that this moment is not a placeholder, not a pause between destinations, but the destination itself. And even if things are messy, unclear, unresolved, that too is part of the perfection. That too is part of the story that is unfolding in ways you don't yet understand. You don't need to see the whole picture to trust that the brush is in motion, that the painter knows what he's doing even when you don't. So rest into this. Trust into this. Trust in your place in it all. Not because you figured it out, but because you've let go of needing to. Trust not in certainty, but in awareness. Awareness that you are not falling behind, you are falling inward. Awareness that you are not late, you are on time, in a rhythm too vast to calculate. Awareness that what you seek is not ahead of you, it is around you, within you, as you. We often mistake tension for purpose. We believe that by tightening our minds and bodies, by clenching ourselves into focus, we will somehow force life into compliance. But the more tightly you grip, the more life slips through your fingers. It is like trying to hold water by grasping it. The tighter you try to possess it, the quicker it escapes. Real alignment with life doesn't come through force, but through surrender, through a letting go, a softening, a kind of divine laziness. Not in the sense of apathy, but in the sense of allowing. There is a great intelligence in letting things be, not in abandoning responsibility, but in ceasing to try to control everything with the narrow lens of the ego. The ego wants certainty. It wants guarantees. It wants to know the outcome before it begins. And yet, life does not function like a straight line with clear labels. It functions more like a dance or a song. There is rhythm, there is flow, and there are pauses. There is space between the notes. And that space is not emptiness. It is what gives the notes meaning. We are conditioned to feel uncomfortable with space. Space, with waiting, with not knowing. We rush to fill it with noise, with plans, with distractions. But true creativity, true transformation arises in the quiet, in the in-between, in the places where you stop pushing and begin listening. Listening not with your ears, but with your being. It is here, in this relaxed attentiveness, that life begins to reveal itself, not as something to conquer, but as something to harmonize with. You can't harmonize with something when you're bracing against it. When you're tense, you're not available to receive. Tension narrows perception. You miss the subtle cues, the gentle nudges, the synchronicities that guide you, not with shouting, but with whispers. And the whispers are only heard when you're quiet enough to notice. When you stop trying so hard to make it happen and begin to notice that it is already happening, with or without your interference. Relaxation, then, is not a luxury. It's not what happens after you solve everything. It is the starting point. It is the space where clarity arises, not because you invented it, but because you made room for it. The tree does not stress about growing, it simply grows. It does not analyze its roots each morning to ensure progress. It leans into the soil and trusts the unfolding. and that same intelligence lives in you, not as a thought, but as a rhythm, a pulse, stillness behind all. But we are so uncomfortable with that stillness. It feels like doing nothing, and we have been taught that doing nothing is failure. But the stillness is not inactivity, it is receptivity. It is the open space in which inspiration lands. The ideas you try to chase by thinking harder often come when you're walking in silence, or standing under the shower, or simply staring out the window. This is not coincidence. It is because you relax the mechanism of the mind. You're walking in silence. You're walking in silence, or you're walking in silence. And let something deeper rise up. And what if everything that needs to happen is already in motion? What if your only task is to get out of the way, not by withdrawing from life, but by ceasing to resist it? The river does not need your help to flow. The sun does not need your schedule to rise. There is a rhythm, ancient and effortless, that governs the unfolding of all things. And you are not separate from it. You are made of it. So when you tense, when you worry, when you push, you are not aiding life. You are interrupting your own participation in it. Think about a piece of music. The silence between the notes is just as essential as the notes themselves. Without space, it would be noise. The same is true for your journey. The space, the slowness, the apparent pause. These are not delays. They are part of the melody. They are what allow the next moment to be beautiful, to be in tune. When you fill every moment with effort, with control, with striving, you leave no room for the magic to slip in. We are so quick to panic when things aren't moving fast enough. We assume that stillness means stagnation, that slowness means failure. But growth is not always visible. Seeds germinate in darkness. Healing happens in silence. Shifts occur beneath the threshold of awareness. Just because you can't see the progress doesn't mean it's not unfolding. Just because it doesn't fit your timeline doesn't mean it's wrong. The timeline you cling to is a mental construct. Reality is far more fluid. When you truly relax, something inside you realigns. The need to prove, to force, to impress, it begins to dissolve. And in that space, something ancient and wise begins to move. You are no longer living from the surface of yourself, but from the depth. And the depth does not rush. The depth is already whole. It is not waiting to arrive. It is simply being, and from that being, right action arises naturally. Not action as reaction, not action as desperation, not action as a seamless part of the dance. To live like this is not to retreat from the world, but to meet it more intimately. It is to trust the intelligence that breathes you, that beats your heart, that turns the seasons without your involvement. This intelligence is not outside of you. It is you. When you begin to see that you are the rhythm, not separate from it, the need to control begins to feel unnecessary. Life is not something you master, it is something you participate in. Not by tensing, but by softening. Not by predicting, but by listening. Even the moments of apparent chaos, of uncertainty, of delay. These two belong. These two are part of the unfolding. The caterpillar dissolves into a kind of soup before it becomes the butterfly. That dissolution is not failure. It is the necessary breakdown before the breakthrough. And so, when your life feels like it's unraveling, it may be that you are being softened into your next becoming. You don't have to resist this unraveling. You can meet it with open hands. You can trust it, even when you don't understand it. There is a quiet revolution in doing less. Not less in the sense of avoidance, but less in the sense of unnecessary struggle. The oak tree does not race the maple. The ocean does not compare itself to the sky. There is a dignity in the natural unfolding of things, a serenity in letting go of timelines and simply responding to what is. When you allow life to breathe through you without obstruction, you find yourself acting, not from pressure, but from presence. Not because you must, but because it is what naturally arises. Relaxation is not a withdrawal from purpose. It is what allows purpose to find you. It is the surrender of the small self to something larger, something more rhythmic, something infinitely wise. When you relax, you are not giving up. You are giving in to the wisdom of the moment. Giving in to the breath that is already happening. Giving in to the life that knows exactly what it's doing, even when you don't. Giving in to the love of mine is always a pretty partisan answer. Giving in to the love of my language. As a Hannibal Rollo Tara Ratman, Eric Garn David Wilson pursued this score. Let's have ANGLM, and oh, it's your main energy save. Thank you, thank you.